Hello YouTube, my name's Jason and this is Line. Today I'm going to go over interfaces. And interfaces are basically reference types. And you would use a reference type in the fact that if you was to send a company let's say you sent a company some classes and they didn't know how to use them classes. Therefore, it would just take them forever. It would just be easier to send them an interface so they can implement the class the way they wanted to. Well, implement the methods the way they wanted to. Whereas in a class, you have to predefine the class. The methods. That way, they can be used. Whereas in an interface, we use abstract methods, which means they're undefined. So, and the way you would create these is you would create it by saying something like string lucky, and you would end it with a semicolon. And then you could still give it its parameters, or y. You can give it parameters and pass them through it too. And you can also pass constants and nesteds into it also. But we're not going to pass any constants or nested. For this tutorial, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to pass this. Also, the next thing we're going to go over is inside of a interface, you cannot implement another method. And not another method, but another interface. So let's say we interface something, and we get an error because one, we don't have it created, and two, you can't implement a method. So let's go ahead and create another interface, and we're going to call this one something. And the reason it's still getting this error is because you can only extend other interfaces. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to create another abstract method inside of this one. And we're going to call this one int Chewy. And we'll just go ahead and not do that. And do that, and we won't put any parameters in it. This way we have created this. And the good thing about interfaces is you can implement as many interfaces as you want. And right now we don't have another interface called that, so if we did, and since that's just something random, I'll just copy it, Control C, Control V. But in classes, you can only extend one other class. Let's go ahead and delete that one. We're not going to use that one for this tutorial. I just wanted to show that you could extend multiple interfaces among interfaces. The next thing you need to know is how to implement an interface. And if you're inside of a class and you want to implement an interface, you have to use the implements keyword, and then you put the interface that you want to implement. And that's how you would basically implement it. The problem we're getting right here right now is that whenever you implement an interface, you have to give it all of its abstract methods to be called. So right now it's saying we can't implement an interface. So we have to create all of its methods over, but this time we have to actually define them. So I don't remember what they were called, so I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to do add unimplemented methods. And these are the methods that we created. You remember we created Chewy. Chewy was inside of the something interface, which we extended, so it had to be called. And we implemented Lucky, and Lucky was inside of it, and it had to be called. So all we have to do is now we have to define these. And right now all they're doing is returning 0 because the default value for int is 0 and the default value for string is null. So let's go ahead and create an integer for this, and we're going to call this int x, and we're going to make it equal to 3. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to create an if statement. But first we're going to create a let's create a string, and we're going to make this string equal to z, and we're going to make it send null. So, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create an if statement and say if x is less than 5, and we're going to say z equals y. And so basically what we're going to do is we're going to send a value of x to it and a value of y, and x is going to be from this value, z is going to be from this value, but z is going to grab the y's value and it's going to do this. So it's going to take the y's value and put it on z, and then we're just going to send z back, return z back to the main method whenever it gets called. And also we're going to use the x integer from Chewy to send to x over here. So let's go ahead and create this inside of here. The first thing we need to do is we need to create a dog class, well, a dog object, and we're going to just call this object just because I don't want to do anything other than that. New, and we're just going to say dog because that's what the constructor is. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to take the first thing we need to do is we need to give a value of an integer. So we need to go ahead and say int, let's say booger, I can't think of anything else, and we're going to give this the value of object dot, and we're going to give it the value of Chewy, and we got to pass x back over here, so we got to put x right there because that's the value we're sending back. So now booger has the value of x because we declared booger and we gave it the value of Chewy. Whenever you give it the value of a method, it gives it the value of the return type. So that's why it does that. The next thing we need to do is we need to create a string, and we're going to call this one that string, just because I don't feel like calling it anything else. And we're going to call object.lucky, and now we have to give it two values. We have to give it the value of x and the value of y, and if you notice it says it's got to be int x and string y because right here we have int x and string y. So we're going to send back booger, and for the y value we are just going to send some string. So let's go ahead and write out a string like this is victory. So we're just going to send this is victory over to it, and now we have to print this out on the screen. So let's go ahead and do that. So system.out.println, and we're going to send that string right there, which is equal to lucky because lucky was a string method, and it returned z, which z was taken from y, and y is equal this is victory. So if x is less than 5, and because we created a booger, and we passed booger the value of 3 and we sent 3 over here, x is going to equal 3. So we're sending 3 to it, so we know that 3 is less than 5, so we should return z, which is going to be returned to the lucky method that we called right here, and given the value to that string, which we're going to print out on the screen. Let's also do an else right here just in case it's not that value and we want to send it something else. So we're going to say z equals, and we're going to say this is not victory. You failed. There we go. So let's go ahead and print this on the screen. If you notice, it says this is victory, but that's because 3 is less than 5. Let's go ahead and change this one to 34. And we'll print this on the screen. And now it says, this is not victory, you failed. Well, that's all I'm going to go over in this tutorial. Let me go ahead and give you a straight rundown of what we did. The first thing we did was we created a interface called test, and we extended something. And if you remember, we can add more we can extend more interfaces, whereas in a class you can't. Also, something I want to go over is you can actually implement more interfaces than that, but you can only extend one class, but you can implement as many interfaces as you want, so long as you put that little comma right there so it knows you're implementing more interfaces. So we created that, and we used abstract methods inside of it. That way the dog class had to actually it had to define them classes. And when we defined them classes, we noticed that whenever we first created the dog object, which was the dog object, well, the dog class, we gave the object, the dog class value, and then we took integer booger, and we made booger equal to Chewy, and Chewy was equal to 3 at first, not 34. And it gave booger the value of 3 because we returned x, which was 3. We then went to string and gave a variable string the value of lucky, which we sent booger, which was a value of 3, to lucky, which was right here, and we sent the string this is victory to y. And we created, when we came over to y, we had the string z, and it was equal to null because it needed to be created. And then we said if x is less than 5, give z the value of y, which we sent over from here. So now z equals y, and whenever we returned it, we got z got returned to that string. That string then was printed on the screen. We also came back over here and we changed this to 34. And since booger was 34 and it got sent to right here, we said now x is no longer less than 5, so this is not victory, you failed, and this is what our end result was. Thank you for watching. My name's Jason. This was Lineware. Please comment, rate, and subscribe, and have a great day.